Thank you so much, Ines, for coming on the Architecture Unbound podcast. I'd love it if you could just introduce yourself to the audience and let us know a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So for everyone who doesn't know me, my name is Ines. I'm half Austrian, half Australian. I did my architecture bachelor's in Vienna and then got accepted to TU Delft in Holland. And that's where everything changed for me. I had an explosion in my mind about what architecture can be and do. I no longer wanted to be a traditional architect in the way of, designing and possibly developing buildings, but I really wanted to explore what else architecture can be and do. So that was a time of a lot of learning. I really enjoyed it. Then after my graduation, I reached a 180-degree point where I was urged to go within and really figure out who I am, what's meaningful to me, and it was really a call for me to live a more honest life, more true to who I am, and not always according to what culture wants for me, what family, what friends want for me. And so I moved all the way to the other side of the world, my second home, Australia, and had this limbo between, should I join a conventional design firm, architecture firm, or should I do my own thing? And so I started a platform called What Architecture School Doesn't Teach You, which is a platform for architects and designers to unlock their potential. I believe every architect, every designer has so much potential within themselves, so many hidden latent abilities. And if we all brought those out individually and collectively, we wouldn't only bring fresh wind into the architecture world, but we would just transform the planet. We would be such a force of nature individually and collectively. So that's what I'm passionate about. And yes, enjoying the process.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. All right. So the biggest gaps in architecture school that you experienced that basically led you to create your page.
Yeah. So what we learn at architecture school basically is certain skills, certain technical skills, how to operate certain PC programs, how to, technical skills, maybe how to write a little bit, framework, sustainability. And that's all important, right? But so the thing is that these are very measurable things, and they're kind of external things. And while they're very important, we need to ask, are they enough to really thrive in the future? Are those skills alone enough to confront the challenges in the world as an empowered agent of change? Because if we look 20 years back, the profession was pretty clear you would become an architect if you studied architecture, but things have changed a lot and things are going to change with so much stuff going on at the moment, with so much uncertainty, climate change and the fourth industrial revolution, which is facing a lot of uncertainty. So we need another skill set, which is not really taught so much about in architecture school. And those are the things, and that's the reason why they're not really taught, because those are the things that you cannot teach them. You can't really teach them properly. They need to be empowered, they need to be inspired, because they're not really tangible. Those are the soft skills. Yeah. So we get taught the hard skills, and that's very important, but we also need the soft skills to thrive. We need stuff like communication, leadership, responsibility, compassion, self-awareness, self-care. At this point in time, I feel there's so many people, so many architects, so many designers, they're just so burnt out,
Yeah.
And so depressed. And it's because we've been focusing on one side of the coin really extensively, but we've been neglecting the other side of the coin, which is self-care, for example, and finding that balance between both worlds. And so I'm passionate about that balance. I'm passionate about the soft skills. And I feel if we boil down all the soft skills into one, it would all boil down to self-awareness. And that's what I'm really passionate about, because if we really dig into ourselves far enough, we'll arrive at a point where we realize that everything is interconnected. And not even just intellectually, but just as an embodied knowing. And when we realize everything is interconnected, we will step up naturally,
Yeah.
We will step naturally up to the plate. If I feel I'm interconnected, I'll feel compassion for living beings around me for everything and everyone. So the way I build in the world, the way I see a building changes completely. And yes, so that's the crucial other side of the coin that I feel architecture school is neglecting a little bit.
Yeah, so when you graduated, had you ever had an opportunity to actually go and experience the standard like 9 to 5 corporate office culture of architecture?
I've done that.
Exposed this for you?
Yeah, well, so I didn't do it after my master's, but I did it. So I had various jobs during my bachelor's and between my bachelor's and my master's as well. So I did experience a little bit about that. And I have to say that with the jobs that I had, it wasn't too bad, you know. There are stories out there, it's way worse. I'm like, I don't even want to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is that after my studies, after my master's studies, when I moved to Melbourne and I was in that limbo of, am I going to do my own thing? Am I going to work for an architecture firm? Am I going to do both at the same time somehow? So when I was in that limbo, I did get a job interview at a corporate architecture firm, really big global firm in Melbourne. And I went to the interview, and just the climate of the interview said everything about how the job's going to be. And to put it plainly, I was so turned off by the whole kind of conversation that I literally walked out the door and I said, this is not my truth. Like this, I'm not going to be happy. So I need to find a way to make something else happen. I need to find a way. I was at a place in my life where I was like, I couldn't do anything anymore that was not honest, you know, that wasn't aligned with some deeper sense of who I am. So yeah, that's pretty much my experience.
I've similarly gone through an experience where I've also had this sort of self-discovery or awakening moment, so to speak, of what I actually want to do in the field of architecture that isn't necessarily what everybody expects us to do. So I did graduate and I jumped right into a job, and I worked there for 2.5 years. It was a very small firm and I learned a lot of things. And then there was just a lot of things internally that I wasn't sure I wanted to really do anymore. Like I wasn't, I felt like I was at the point where I was doing the 9 to 5 and working for somebody else and in the architecture hustle culture because that's what was expected of me. And I was limiting myself so much with what I thought I was supposed to do that I finally like, I had created my architecture page, Architecture Unbound, with the whole premise of architecture is limitless. Like it's connected to so many things, and there are just so many there's so much potentiality with it in the fields of work that we're able to do with an architecture background. And so I finally had like a sort of a breaking point, and I quit my job, and I have been unemployed from a full-time job for 2 months now, which is crazy. And I'm also sort of going through that process of just figuring out how to slow down, which I think is a huge thing, especially for the architecture industry and people who are drawn to architecture and become architects. It is one of the most hustle careers, right? When I went to architecture school, everyone was like, oh, all-nighters are architecture's staple. Like that is just what everybody thinks about when they think about architecture. People are really hardworking and really driven, and it's almost too much to the point of where people burn out so quickly, like you were mentioning.
Well, the thing is that, you know, the funny thing about us is we have so many invisible rules that we think we need to adhere to. Like it's really funny because no one ever talks about those rules very openly, but it's just like a common understanding that if you do certain things, if you behave in certain ways, if you work as long as you can, you know, if you're super depressed, it means like you're like the typical kind of architect. So it's like a thing of belonging. We all adhere to these rules to belong, because if we do something different, we feel we'll be judged. We're not architect enough. It's really weird, but I feel it's really important to break out of that bubble, because
Mm-hmm.
where is it getting us? We're just getting more and more depressed. We're at a point where, you know, where we're asking questions like, are architects needed? Are they becoming obsolete? So clearly something needs to change.
Yeah, it is definitely. It's one of those industries that it's one of those weird things because it's like architects are very undervalued and underpaid. And we are one of the most hardworking, you know, poked fun at the fact that we're so hardworking. So it's an interesting thing with the balance there. Like there's almost no balance. And I was thankful enough like that when I was working in a 9 to 5, I wasn't in a super corporate setting. But I know like from a lot of my friends, like it's so competitive still, and like you're judged based on like how much effort and extra time you give to the company. And there's really no appreciation on who you are as an individual and your value as an individual. And there's no value put on like work-life balance, which is just crazy to me because it's like so much of our jobs as an architect is to create nurturing experiences in the world through architecture, like a pleasant experience with architecture, but we're not even allowed or even have enough time when we're working so intensely to go and experience those things for ourselves. There's such a disconnect there.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I feel the way we build, the way we design, the things we do out there can never be truly nurturing if we haven't cultivated that thing within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how are you as a disconnected, how am I as a really disconnected individual able to create environments that are super connecting, super nourishing for people? Like, how does that work? There's a disconnect there. And so we need to, you know, look within ourselves, because the change starts within. It's really that way, you know, the change starts within. So we can be the kind of person that just always looks out there at all the things that are wrong and say, you need to change. We need to pressure the institutions to change and blah, blah, blah. And yes, that's part of the picture as well. But we can also take responsibility for our own reality, right? Saying like, okay, I cannot change the whole culture, but I can change how I act within this culture. And maybe I can do my own thing. Maybe I can step out of the culture if that is what I want, you know? Because in the end, it all comes down to what we believe about things, what we believe about who we are. Like even what our beliefs are about work ethics and money. Like if I believe that I will earn a lot of money if I work a lot, then that will be my reality. And so that's a belief a lot of us have. The more I work, the more money I will get.
Yeah.
But it's like at the same time, maybe we don't really value our work because we don't get enough money. So it's like dig within yourself and find out like, why don't you value your work? Maybe it's not about pressuring people to realize they need to value our work. Maybe we need to believe in our work more in our value that we bring into the world, you know. And then also make an effort to communicate it effectively. Learn how to be effective communicators. That's one thing we don't learn at school at all, I feel. You know, we indirectly, maybe through presentations, we present all our stuff, but doesn't mean we really get like the know-how to open our hearts, to communicate with empathy with another human being. How do we really listen to another person? I think with all these things, like the profession already would improve dramatically, just even listening to clients, you know, listening to people.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. In school, we're not taught how to interact with clients. And even though we're given prompts to create a project from, it's not the same as working with somebody to give them the finished project that they desire. It's working to create a finished product that you desire. And I think that is something that carries over into the field a lot that I see. And I hear a lot of stories about this where people are very focused on the designs that they like and the things that they like to create, that the client gets lost in it. And it is so like unfortunate because our whole job is to be able to effectively communicate with the client and give them something that they desire. And I feel like a lot of people aren't able to do, a lot of architects aren't able to do that for whatever reasons, right? Like we're not taught to communicate well and to, you know, whether it is because architects have really big egos and only want to do what they want to do, I don't really know, but it's one of those things where it's like, maybe like architects are getting a bad reputation because people they're not finding the value because we're not doing a good job of giving them that value of what they're coming to us for. Like a lot of people in the industry are pushing their own like design agendas onto people in a way.
Well, a friend of mine recently had her kitchen renewed, for example. And she told me about the process, and she said, but next time I do that, like, I don't need my architect anymore. I'll just get a builder to do it. Like she's doing the whole house. I'll just get a builder. I don't need an architect. And I'm like, why? What happened? I'm like, I wanted 2 bloody basins in the bathroom, and he said 1 would be enough. And now I regret it. Like he just did what he wanted. And then in the kitchen, I said I wanted dishwasher here because it's the most accessible thing for me to do, and he said no to that, and he put it somewhere else. And like she was really angry at him, and she was like, he didn't bloody listen to me. Like I don't need an architect. That what was done, a builder or just a designer without an architecture education could have easily done as well. So it's like a different scenario. That architect would have come to my friend, would have really listened to what my friend wants. And if he thought that wasn't a good idea, maybe they could have struck a middle ground. But then even just the act of listening to her would have totally changed how she views that architect and how she views the work that he's done for her. And she wouldn't curse on him and on all architects, you know, because if it's one architect, it's all architects.
Exactly. We're getting such a bad rep because we're not being taught how to effectively listen and communicate with our clients. And then everyone's like, this is why we're so underpaid, because people, we can't even express our value. Like as an industry, all of the architects, you know, obviously there is sort of a turning over in industry changing, not just in the architecture world, but in the entire world as a whole. There's so much change that's happening, especially with the ability to just communicate through the internet. So it's just so interesting to see how the value that, you know, we say we're so undervalued, architects as a whole, but there's obviously reasons, and some of these things we started talking about, like the communication issues that have led to the whole industry being undervalued and being like, well, I don't really need to hire an architect, or if I'm going to hire an architect, like I'm not going to pay them a lot of money, but they'll gladly pay an engineer whatever their amount of money. So it's just such an interesting conversation to have, because those are the things that really make or break a person, you know, word of mouth, and like just getting people to have a good experience with you as a person. And being able to do that is really important. And it's not something that we're even able to cultivate. A lot of people go into the firms and they're drafting all the time. They don't even get to communicate with clients. I was really lucky because it was just me, my boss, and one other person, that I was so involved with the clients, and I got to go to sites and I got to experience a lot of elements of the industry that I wouldn't have been able to experience if I had worked at a bigger firm with 100 people. So they're not skills that a lot of people get to experience.
Well, you know, the way I see it ultimately is that, you know, every client, every person is their own character, right? Is their own individual. But that's not how our neighborhoods look like. And how, like, if you look at all the houses, especially in Australia, you know, all the urban sprawl, like every house looks the same. And so why is that? It's because none of them is actually tailored to who that person really is. They're all just like blanket designs, like as if we're all the same, you know. But as an architect, or whatever you want to call yourself, don't even call yourself an architect, whatever it is, you have the unique chance, the unique possibility to come together with another human being that is unique. You have the possibility to get to know that person intimately, like what makes them tick, what's their inner psyche like, and then like what are their values, what are their needs, what are their aspirations, what are their hidden desires and longings, and then you design according to that. And you give them something, you design something for them that maybe they didn't even know they wanted and needed.
Yeah.
You know, so it's such a beautiful profession.
Yeah.
And I feel, you know, like with understanding people and effective communication, I feel if we don't learn these things, we will become obsolete, because the fourth industrial revolution is on our doorstep, with a lot of technologies starting to replace, you know, human labor.
Mm-hmm.
And my stance towards that is, yeah, well, let it replace human labor, because we people are not made for human labor. Like for me, that sounds horrible. We are here to create art. We are here to listen to people, to be effective heart-to-heart communicators, to be philosophers, to create, to innovate, to channel all the things that only humans can do, that machines cannot do.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So that's the place we need to access. And I feel that's a question every person in the architecture industry needs to ask themselves. What place in myself can technology not touch? And that's what you need to find out. And if you find that place, you will not be replaceable. That's the ultimate future proof, you know?
Yeah. And I think one of those things too is like we limit ourselves a lot. We think that we can only possibly like do one thing. One of the hardest things for me was accepting and acknowledging the fact that I am a very multifaceted human being and I like to do a lot of different things. I have a lot of different passions. And
me too.
essentially, what made me leave my job was I couldn't commit my whole being to the job and to that company. And that's sort of what my boss sat down and said he wanted. And I just was like, I love the 9 to 5 job. I love working here with you, but I also love to educate people. And I love to create courses and work with people and work with them one-on-one and help them. And if you don't feel like I can do both of those things, like I'm not going to choose. I'm not going to choose. Like I just can't choose. And so essentially that's what led me to resign on that role and decide that I am allowed to be a multi-passionate person and love to do everything. And that gets to be okay. And I get to still find pieces of architecture in all the different things that I do. And that's been really a journey over the last 2 months, like even allowing myself to just rest, because like I said, I went straight into the workforce and never rested. So
and we're all like that. Like we're all, especially architects' nervous systems, they're literally addicted to the stress. So it's a real art to slow down. And no, it's not a weakness, you know, because sometimes it can feel like a weakness, but slowing down is a real revolutionary act. That's really what I believe. It's like, that's like the new world that we're going towards, like just slowing down, because things, like if you really think, why do things need to be so fast and quickly? Why are we not, why can we not enjoy more? Why can we not create more? Why can we not just work on our money beliefs and earn the money that we want, you know, while doing what we love and enjoy? Like those things are all possible. They're not a pipe dream. And so I guess it's just about becoming aware that things are possible, and becoming aware that we are multi-passionate persons, human beings. Because I feel with that awareness, everything changes, as in your case.
Yeah, it's been a journey like I said, over the last 2 months. It's definitely been interesting, just learning how to be okay with doing nothing. And
wow, that's big.
Knowing that like I'm gonna figure out what I want to do, and just accepting that like I don't plan on going back to a 9 to 5. But if that is in the cards ever again, if that's something I want to do, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I've decided, like, officially that I'm going to try and just be in my community. And I've started to work more on this podcast, and I am talking to people just like yourself, and just having space for these conversations where I'm seeing people who aren't doing the norm in architecture, and being able to share that with people. Because like when I did first graduate, that was one of the things that I truly loved about architecture, was how vast it was. And in my whole journey, I have really enjoyed like being able to create a platform where I get to talk to people who are doing things, people who are architectural writers, people who are students who are doing like architectural videography, people who are content creators for architecture, so many different things that it's like I never even knew was possible. And things that like the more we just share and show the world what's possible, it opens up that door for somebody else that doesn't know it even
100%.
exists.
100%. You know, I have this this sentence in my book that it goes something like, we live in a culture where we make birds swim, we make fish walk, we make elephants fly, and we normalize it. You know, we're all like not natural to who we are, not true to who we are at all, you know. But once the fish knows himself well, deeply enough, he will know, the fish will know that, you know, land is not normal for him, and will do whatever it takes to swim again. And then the bird will see that and realize, oh yeah, of course, you know, water is not for me, and will go and fly off. And the elephants will be so inspired by that, they will, oh well, I'm out of here, I'm no longer flying, I'm gonna go back into the bushlands. You know, that's how it works. We just get inspired by each other, by each other's truth. So it's like the ripple effect of just one action.
That is happening so much right now with the 9-to-5 culture, like especially in America. I don't know if this is the same experience in Australia, but in America right now, there's like a workers drought. Like there's no workers. No one wants to work.
Oh, wow.
Like
in architecture or generally?
In architecture, yes, but in general as well. So like it was just me and my boss at the architecture firm, and then we hired somebody, and it was just, there's like no one out there in the architecture field. I don't know if it was our location or what, but outside of the architecture fields, there are just a lot of job openings, and we're always hearing on the news about how no one wants to work anymore. And I really do think it's one of those things where it's like, now we have the internet and we are able to see that fish, right? And know what's possible. And so people aren't so quick to just conform to that 9-to-5 that we've been told that we need to have to succeed. People are seeing every day on social media, people making ends meet in 1,000 different ways and being inspired by that. And I think that is like a huge reason that there's this workers drought right now, or whatever they're calling it, is that whole premise of people just being able to see what's possible. And through social media, that's become available to us.
Yeah. The thing is that the old world, the old ways, they are dying, you know, because the old ways weren't healthy. And now we're realizing that, like, even the concept of a job of 9-to-5, like if you really think about it, you know, we're conditioned to think about a 9-to-5 job as being something very normal for us. And for architects, it's not even 9-to-5, it's like 9-to-9 or something. And it's like normal, but it's not normal. It sucks out the spirit of us, you know. And if we're not doing something that is enjoyable, that we love, then, you know, it's just not healthy. And I do see, and I do acknowledge that sometimes it's difficult, you know, to do something that we love and something we truly enjoy. But there are always ways, you know. Sometimes we can work in a firm and maybe we can start a hobby on the side. Sometimes we can start putting some boundaries in place, so we have more time to do our own stuff and to learn some other skills on the side. And then eventually we can make a leap. So there's always space, there's always a way to do something that we love, even implementing that change within the company, proposing if my position gets replaced tomorrow, because it's a machine-like position anyway, then can I step up to the plate? Can I confront my employer and have a conversation with them and say, look, I want to stay with you guys. I want to create a new position. And I want this position to be more in line with what I'm really good at, because I feel that's going to contribute to me, that's going to benefit me, but that's also going to benefit you, right, as a company. So can we work together and create new positions that is in line with people's passions in this firm? There's a lot of possibilities. And that's why I'm so excited for the times and we're in, and for the times we're steering towards. Like, it's a lot of uncertainty, but there's so much great stuff happening. And especially when things get rough, that's where our hidden talents come out. That's when we really have to dig in and see what potential is there. And that's why I'm just over the moon about it. It's just, I love it. I love it.
So do you want to talk a little bit about your book? What's it called? What are some of the main pieces of it that you're working towards? I assume it has a lot to do with everything we've just sort of touched base on, but I would just love to hear about what made you want to write a book. And then I would love to hear about what that process has been like for you, just writing in general.
Yeah. Well, that's a big question. That's a very good question. So the book is called, according to this moment, it's called The Highly Conscious Architect. And it's a guide to change and transformation for architects and designers to dig within themselves, to shed layers of conditioning, to become aware, to explore who they are, and to unlock that potential within them. That's essentially what the book is about. And it consists of many, many lessons that I have been invited to learn during my master studies and afterwards, in my journey afterwards. And so these lessons, the personal lessons, and then I apply them to the collective of the industry. And really, writing the book has been like a calling to me. So I started What Architecture School Doesn't Teach You, and then there was a big gap where I was like, oh my God, what is this? Where is this going? And I did, I don't know if you heard of it, but I did a course in miracles, which is like a spiritual guide to return to the truth of who you really are. So a lot of things changed for me when I did that. And I got called to write a book. I didn't really know what that book was about. And so I just started writing, and I discovered that writing feels so good to me. It feels so fulfilling to me. And that's how I knew that this was the path for me, because I wasn't ready yet to be out in the world doing stuff out there. It was a very introspective time for me while I had my TV host job on the side. But this book has been challenging in many ways, because one hand, it's very inspiring to write it. But on the other hand, it's very challenging because I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot about myself. And it's like, we think we can control creativity, but it's actually creativity controls us in a way. And so, I have times, and those times, especially at the beginning, that I was just writing, and I literally finished the whole script of the book within probably a year. But then something changed about the creative process, and it felt like it was not there. Like it wanted me to be okay with doing nothing. And I interpret it in ways that like, oh, I'm doing something wrong, I should be pushing. And the more I pushed the writing process, the editing process, the less it happened. So I really was in this limbo, like, what am I going to do? I want to write this book, but at the same time, I don't even feel motivated. But I had a whole script there already. And then I gave it to other people for feedback, which was great as well. And then the creative process came to me again, and I felt more inspired to edit. And then for the last year, again, I had like a phase where I was just urged to do nothing. Like literally to do nothing. And that was a very challenging time for me in many ways, because I tend to be quite high strung and I love to do things and I love to write, you know. So for me to say, just do nothing and chill it and trust the process, that was a big thing. And yeah, and then a month ago, it just completely started off again. Like I couldn't even stop writing. So that's how the process is going, you know, and I'm enjoying it, but it's like, it feels like the biggest challenge of my life or something.
Yeah, it's a lot of
And
surrendering, right? Like
extremely, and not, you know, we think our small ego knows best how things should happen, but there's a bigger part to us. There's a bigger part to us that where things happen at a different timing. And actually, if we surrender our small wants and goals, and surrender to the process, to what is here right now, actually something can emerge that's much bigger than us, and something can emerge that we never even thought could happen, you know?
Yeah, I'm like amazed right now that we're having this conversation right now, because so much of what you're saying I've been feeling and going through, and it is just like blowing my mind. Everything you're saying, I have been not going through a writing process, but a creativity process. I really wanted to revamp my course, and like when I quit my job, I was like, had such expectations of how much I could get done in an 8-hour workday, and just believing that the only way to be productive is to work 8 hours a day, which is not true at all, but just deconditioning my brain from feeling that way. And first, like the last 2 months, I've really been battling with myself of like being able to just rest completely, and having that expectation of like, well, no, I should be working towards things now that I have this time. Like, this is what I wanted. But I didn't feel the motivation, and I just didn't feel it anymore. And like I've done all this work while I was working to build the platform, to build my course. And it just felt like, well, if I take this break, like, am I going to give up? Like, is this me giving up? And what I experienced was, over the last 2 weeks, I've actually allowed myself to completely disconnect and take a break. It's been one of the hardest things I've had to do and am going through. And in doing that, I've been feeling my creativity and like that desire and motivation slowly come back naturally, just from allowing myself to completely disconnect, because I was very half in, half out. Like I'm going to rest, but I'm not going to let myself rest completely, because I feel like I can't do that. Like I feel like I have to still do it.
I totally get it. But you know what I've learned is, if you don't feel the motivation, don't do anything. The most powerful thing you can do, and literally the most powerful thing you can do in that situation, is to surrender completely to the feeling. And to even, you know, when you surrender so completely to frustration, for example, you reach a point where feeling frustration feels blissful. Like, and just feels relaxing. That's when you know you've really surrendered. It's like, yeah, I feel frustrated, and that's fine, you know? So the more you can surrender to the feeling, the more, well, me as well, it's a lesson for me, the more we can surrender to that feeling and just surrender to the rest and enjoy it, the more we will gain that creative swing again. It's like 100% rest or 100% doing, 100% being, and then 100% doing. And we don't even have to actively control it, just flow with it. You know,
exactly.
Because the thing is, it's another form of conditioning, because we're conditioned in certain ways about how creativity is supposed to work. We think that to be creative in the world, and we hear that a lot from motivational speakers, you need to do, you need to act, you know, you need to be up before everyone else is up, you know, all these things. It's like, no, if I want to get up at 9, I'm going to get up at 9. But it's like creativity, according to the universe, works completely differently, you know, because everything in the universe, there's like an outward movement, and then there's an inward movement. That's how everything flows. If you look at the sea, it goes in and out. Even when we take a breath in and then out. So creation is a process of in, out, in, out. It's a process of being and doing. So creativity is basically, again, both sides of the coin. We've done a lot of doing and neglected the being. It's another soft skill in a way, you know? And so if we can allow to be, the doing will flow naturally, and we won't have to push it. We won't have to motivate ourselves artificially, but it's just we act out of pure joy, because this is what we're supposed to be doing.
But like you said, like you took a break from your book and then you were able to come back to it like with full force. It's like when we allow ourselves to completely detach from something and just not even worry about, if we'll ever pick it up again, it will just happen naturally, because
yeah, absolutely.
We have to trust ourselves and trust the universe.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
But that's how it works, That's how it works too. It's like being tested in a way,
Yeah.
But things are changing, like the old ways are dying out. So the old ways of doing things no longer work. And if we do things according to the old ways, we will stumble upon a lot of obstacles. So that's, if we stumble upon a lot of obstacles, a lot of frustration, that's a sure sign that we're holding on to something old that is not really serving us anymore. Can we let go of all that pressure that we put on ourselves?
What are some ways that you see the industry changing over the next 5-10 years? What are some things you feel like are really coming for, especially the architecture industry?
Well, one of the biggest things is definitely technology. New technologies replacing many jobs. Many new jobs will be created. Many current positions will have to adapt.
Yeah.
And so if we don't dig deep and step into our power, we will be replaced, And I don't see technology as something that is happening to us. Technology is happening for us. We can finally delegate tasks that are tedious and mundane. We can finally delegate those, because who wants to do thousands of calculations and manual analysis? That's not fun. We can delegate those things and focus on the things that we can do uniquely. Focus on the things that a machine cannot do.
Yeah.
And if we no longer want to work for an architect, we do our own thing. We discover what it is that we're really good at. We all have so many gifts. We're all so talented. Like, every person is a gift. Every person in the architecture industry has unique abilities, unique contributions to give. And the architecture industry, or the world in general, is better for every person there is, and so if we can be in service with our gifts in whatever way, that's brilliant. That's what we're heading towards. That's what the Industrial Revolution is here to empower us to do, I feel.
Yes.
Everything is working for us.
Yes. Amazing. I loved this conversation so much, Ines. I really feel like this was like a perfectly timed conversation for me in my life, and like just connecting with you in this moment has been so meaningful for me, and I'm so grateful for you and your time, and this has just been such a nice conversation.
Thank you. Likewise, it was really beautiful to talk to you, and lovely to hear about your process as well, and I'm super excited for you. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep resting as well,
I'm trying.
The more you rest, the more you'll do.
Yes.
That's how it works.
Yep. I got to give myself space to have the creativity just come, which is happening. So for anybody out there that might not believe that taking a step back from something actually then propels you forward, we just both had stories on how that has propelled us forward. So let this be a lesson to rest fully.
Well, I'm gonna go rest now. I'm gonna have my coffee. So
yes, of course. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.